We are going to try to do that, is to have informal discussions about a couple of topics, but maybe we should start by, for 1 minute, I'll let you introduce yourselves, so you'll do better service than I would. Thank you.
Okay. Bonjour à tous. Good morning, everybody. My name is Nicolas Champetier. So, as said, I'm working for Stellantis, and Stellantis is a creation since January of the fourth largest automotive car maker, coming from Group PSA, Peugeot, I would say, and Fiat Chrysler on the other side. So, I am leading the advanced engineering for propulsion system, where we can have a lot of usage of data. And we will come back on this topic. And I am representing the company in the French ecosystem of research. So nice to be with you today.
So thank you for inviting me. So as Jean said, I'm a shareholder in PRAIRIE and a researcher at CNRS, actually, in this building. So I'm doing AI on various applications, including health and also finance regulation. I'm, as Jean said, also the Chief Scientific Officer of the National Platform Health Data Hub, which is a national platform for accessing health data. And I'm also actually a co-founder of a startup, Namer, that is operating deep tech for ecology transition and energy transition. And so my main focus is really a lot about organizing data spaces and organizing the data for operating AI.
So hello, my name is Simon Holmes. I work in a company called Faurecia. We're an automotive parts supplier, which means that our business is to design and manufacture car components. So for example, companies like Stellantis are a major customer for our group. And I'm in charge of a very recent entity that the group created called the Digital Services Factory, running what we call in our center of competence. And our role is to bring and develop AI solutions and big data analytics to bring value to the company.
Morning, everybody, and thank you for having us today. My name is Vincent Bouatou. I'm in charge of strategic innovation for a company called IDEMIA, who is focusing on delivering security solutions to governments, financial institutions, and mobile operators, heavily leveraging artificial intelligence technology.
Thank you very much. So let's start the discussion. I thought we would start by talking about the main issues about AI and data, and maybe each of you can give its point of view from the business he's in and the particular issue that are important, concrete examples. So maybe we should start with the automotive industry and maybe Nicolas.
Okay, so the main issue we have is probably the volume of data that we are producing by ourselves within our cars themselves, but also in our daily execution operations. So a lot of data means we have to be much more focused to find solutions to treat all these data, to have I would say a smart data collection and to collect only what is relevant. First of all, if we take the example of the autonomous driving, we have a large, wide scope of system to perceive the environment. And in the same time, what matters is not all the situations. So we are looking for algorithm to create metadata, I would say, to replace each of any of the data collected by camera, lidars, and so on. And we have to focus on the real and concrete situation for customers. So I would say the main concern is volume and relevance of the data for the automotive industry.
And do you, can you keep the data? Do you want to keep the data that is acquired?
The issue is that if you take a single car, we are producing each day 90 teraoctets of data. So you can imagine that storing this data is a nonsense. So we have to treat them to collect the right ones and to consider the ones that are relevant. So no, there is no intention to capture everything in the daily usage of the automotive industry.
Thank you. Simon?
So for us, I think we do a lot of work trying to develop computer vision models that allow us to identify whether our products are okay or defective. And again, it's linked to the data collection. There's a big question on the annotation as well, because we want our solutions to be easily deployable at scale in the different manufacturing plants that we have throughout the world. And for the annotation, sometimes it's really not obvious if a part is defective, so we need expert people to annotate, which are in the plants. And manufacturing plants are notoriously extremely busy. And so it's actually difficult to get the resources available to help us even create the data sets. And so this is a relatively big problem. We're thinking about solutions how to help this through synthetic images and things like this. But it's also a question of having balanced data sets to run our models. Because obviously our business is not to create defective parts. That's a waste of money, it's scrap. So it's actually very difficult to generate sufficient data sets to even begin training. And then we have the burden of how we can find resources and create systems that can be easily deployed at scale.
Yes.
So at IDEMIA, we're fortunate enough to be working on the most sensitive data there is, which is biometric data from a data protection perspective. So collecting data, which requires consent of every single individual concerned, has become somewhat of a chore for us. We've been hit hard in terms of ability to collect data by the strengthening of the regulations. So it's really an issue for us to be able to collect data while obviously enforcing the regulations. So we've turned to synthetic data for a number of our use cases, and we've made success on some applications, such as general video analytics solutions. But when it comes to biometric technology and the ability to generate actual human traits, such as fingerprints and faces, we've done a number of PhDs on this particular subject, and we've found that so far we are unable to generate synthetic data that would be extremely useful for training for us. So that's still an open question.
Okay, thank you. And Emmanuel, it's a slightly different point of view because it's not industry and it's health.
Yes, so let me pitch the health use case. So maybe I'm going to mention what I think is a more fundamental challenge than what was mentioned by my colleagues. We have a lot of very, very beautiful and very rich health databases in France. And there are a lot of projects, really nice projects that are conducted or that have been conducted on this database. Now, it is pretty clear for basically everybody that all these health databases are largely underused. And this is mainly because of three reasons. So these will be the three challenges, I think. The first one is that they are scattered everywhere, so it's very hard to know which data is where. The second one is that the governance can be a nightmare. It's heterogeneous, sometimes it's discretionary, and I'm sure there are a lot of people in this room doing health, and a lot of them trying to access some data, and they have been waiting. I have been waiting for 3 years to access some data sets, so that can be a real nightmare. And third one, but I guess we'll speak about it again, is interoperability of the different data sets. So these are, I think, the three challenges that we have in France, but it's not a French specificity. I mean, almost all countries are facing that. And if we are thinking at an international level, of course, this is even, all these challenges are even more important at a much higher level. The data is scattered everywhere, governance is different for each country, and interoperability, forget it, between countries, that's a nightmare.
Thank you. To follow on, maybe you can tell us a few words about the Health Data Hub, and then we can link that to societal issues for all of you, of course, because, of course, there are many with data.
Sure. So at the Health Hub, we are trying to solve a little bit these challenges, at least to bring some breaks. So we are a national platform for facilitating access to health data for operating public interest research. So we were created about 2 years ago now. We are accompanying more than 50 projects, and the number is growing like crazy. And of course, a lot of them are related to AI. So basically, you can access the data by just sending us a form, an access form, and then you have a pipeline for governance. So that's nice. That's a unique governance. It is much faster than what was before, but it's not fast enough yet. I mean, I must confess. We have also a mission for animation of the ecosystem, so we organize a lot of different events, data challenges, and so on. We are also in partnerships with at European level. This is very important for us because this is not just a French project. It's very important to work with the international ecosystem. And actually, I'm very happy to announce that we are leading a consortium that is candidating to lead the pilot for the European health data space. So we are candidate to that pilot, and we are leading a consortium with the most important actors in Europe, because we have 6 national nodes, so Finland, Norway, Denmark, Germany, Belgium, and France, and we had the EMA, the European Agents for Medication, and we have other partners. So the goal here is to build a network of nodes so that researchers from any country would have access to all the data from the different countries. So that's the ultimate goal. And of course, we are trying to do that also in France, so we have to work at very different levels.
Okay, and what about things like privacy and data protection?
Oh, it's a major subject, yeah.
And then I'm sure you guys will have a lot to say about that.
So there are a lot to talk about it, okay, let me tell you how we work at the hub. So at the hub, all the data are centralized in a single platform. So when you ask for access of the data, you can access remotely to the platform. Of course, you don't have the possibility to take out the data. You have to work remotely. And the data are pseudonymized, so meaning you don't have directly identifying the fields. So you don't have the name, the exact birth, exact addresses, or stuff like that. But you do have access to the health data at the finest level, which is good news for researchers. Now, of course, that means we have to have a very secured platform. I mean, the state agency, ANSSI, said that we're one of the most secure platform in France. So this is a very, very important subject. Now, I know that it's also a subject that is very important for the patients, for the citizens. I mean, they are very concerned by that. But I would like also to say something about that, which I think is very important, which is sharing data, using data, especially with AI. This is something extremely complex to understand, even for us sometimes. I mean, knowing what's going on with our data on our mobile phone, it's extremely hard to understand, even when we are experts. So let's just imagine for somebody who is not expert. So this leaves room for all the fantasies that can be positive, like you can see people thinking that AI is going to solve all the problems, like in health, like we're going to live till 300 years old and so on. I mean, you have specialists saying that today in conferences, okay? And also the most dark fantasies about the fact that all the insurance companies are going to take your health data and then you're not being able to borrow some money or at some incredible rate and so on. It's very, very important to educate people in an objective way, not to say you have to share because it's good or not, but to let them know what AI can do, what it cannot do today, and there are a lot of things that AI cannot do today. We all know that very perfectly, but it's not said enough, I think. And what does it mean to share the data? What are the risks of sharing data? And most importantly, what are the risks of not sharing data? Because this is also something we're not talking about. And this is, I think, one of the top things to do today. Once we have done that, then each citizen will have the choice, and it will be a clear-minded choice to be made, but that's not at all the case today.
Thank you, Emmanuel. So I would like to get your reaction from the automotive industry and the biometry industry.
So for the topic of the data privacy is key also, but when you are a global OEM, you think global, and when you observe the practices, they are clearly not the same. I used to work three years in China. Data privacy in China doesn't mean anything. Data belongs to everybody, including health data, so there is absolutely no issue. The unique constraint is to store all the data in China. So that's clear that we can do a lot in this kind of country. In Europe, data privacy is key, and so we have to take that in consideration in the way we are proposing, I would say, solutions or services to our customers. When it happens in the car, it remains in the car. I think there is no big issue. Sometimes it could be when you have to monitor the behavior of the occupants to recognize the occupant, the driver, to monitor the usages. But when it remains in the car, we have solution. When we have to move the data to the cloud and to provide services, the question of anonymization is an issue, of course. You lose the contact and you lose the link with the customer. So we have, I would say, a permanent balance between data privacy and business, of course. So for new services that could be proposed to our customers, we are in trouble regarding this constraint. But for the automotive industry, the solution, AI is not the solution to everything. We are very pragmatic guys. We focus on, I would say, applications that bring something to the customers first. You have a battery electric vehicle. Your main concern is range and charging. So we will provide the solution that help the customer, that will solve this issue. That means that will propose the charging offer when it is necessary to anticipate on the need of the customer. Okay, so we are pragmatic. We will monitor the drowsiness to avoid accidents. We will anticipate on the behavior of the occupants when he will be in autonomous driving mode to release and to recover the driving of the car. So we are very concrete. We don't expect AI to be the alpha and the omega of all the techno embedded in the car. So we start with machine learning. We start at small level, but we increase step by step. And of course, the most complicated application is autonomous driving because we have to monitor so many parameters in the same time, and we have the safety issue to ensure, so safety first. So this explains why we are very cautious in the implementation of AI in the car.
Thank you. And maybe you guys can react. And besides it, also the reliability and regulations that are two big issues. You guys want to? Simon?
I think I totally agree with the colleagues who just expressed themselves on the subject. I think it's probably less dramatic, if I can say like that, for the car industry. As the colleague said, what happens in the car kind of stays in the car, and I think the way we structure data when it's pushed to the cloud to ensure anonymity, I think we have solutions for that. I'd just like to come back with something you said in terms of education. I mean, it's so important. As you said, AI is not the solution for everything, and we have a lot of fantasy and people expecting a huge amount from solutions, and we also have to manage expectations and help educate people. And it's also education. I mean, when we go to our manufacturing plants and we get there's a team of about 3 people, we have a bunch of cameras and we're setting things up, and we also have to educate the operators in the plant so that they can understand what we're doing. We're not there to make solutions that are going to take their jobs away and things like this. So I think education is really, really important.
Thank you.
I subscribe to everything that has been said before, especially by Emmanuel, with the added twist that you can't anonymize or pseudonymize biometric data. So it's not an option we have. Laws consider that biometric data cannot be anonymized, which is an additional difficulty in collecting, storing, and securing data. I'll just make a small distinction for us, which is very important. There's the data that we use for R&D and optimization on the one hand, and then there's data that is funneled through our applications in operations, which is two different sides of the same coin. For R&D, we implemented best practices. I mean, with my position in the company, I don't have access to research data. I can't access it. It's just not part of the governance. We've put in place a very strong governance in such that only researchers have access to research data for a very short amount of time for a dedicated purpose, etc. Plus, we have to delete data that we have painfully collected after a few years because it's the regulation and do it all over again. That's an additional difficulty that we face. And then on the operations side, we are facing the difficulty of having to educate and try to support our customers who are wondering how they need to store, manage the data that they have in their own application. We do not operate applications for our customers. So they have the data, they're using it, using our technology. And so we have to help them with their DPIA, help them with everything that goes with the data governance, which is something that is sometimes a huge inhibitor to innovation and deployment of the technology.
So I talked before about the fact we have a working group on transportation, and Faurecia and IDEMIA and Stellantis are part of it. And one of the things that we have discussed, and I hope we will achieve, is maybe sharing data for research. Because my understanding, and it comes from our partner, is that it's difficult for them to share their data with academia or with other industry partners. So would you guys care to comment about that?
In fact, nobody wants to share his data. Did you find a way to get the data of Google, of Amazon? No, not really.
We can try.
From Carrefour? No, not really, because this is their business. With anonymization, I think we have a path to share this data. Of course, this is the right way. Probably automotive industry will be a bit more open than big data on this topic, because this is not only our business, I would say. So on specific fields, why not? Yes, I think it's possible.
Do you want to?
Well, it's maybe too extreme to say that nobody wants to share the data. I mean, at least in the domain I'm working on. No. Okay. We think that when we're academics and when researchers, they are all ready to share the data. No, that's also not true at all. And I can witness, sadly, the fact that during the first wave of COVID, I was mandated by the Prime Minister to operate a task force data versus COVID. And I can tell you that the public institutions were not at all ready to share the data. So even the first wave of COVID, you had some data that were kept by the health institutions because they wanted to be the first one to publish. And this is pretty,
of course,
yes, this is pretty shocking.
Guys, do you want to comment on that?
Again, not much to add to what's already been said. I mean, we sometimes have issues even between departments within the same company to share data, so it is a big problem. But I think you're right. When the use case requires it, and when we see expertise elsewhere that can bring value, then it's much easier to explain to management why sharing of the data is important.
It is extremely difficult for us to share data or access data that's being shared. One thing that I did observe is that maybe 5 years ago, there were a lot of data sets generated by academia that were very helpful for us in our R&D. And after a couple of, I think, lawsuits that happened in the US, many of these data sets were actually removed from accessibility to anyone. I can think of MS Coco, which is a very useful data set, which was removed by Microsoft for legal reasons. So this is a trend that has been extremely harmful to the community at large. I think that we are actually sharing less and less data from the academia and from the industry alike, which from the industry, again, we collect data based on the legal basis of consent, where we commit not to share the data, so we are stuck in not being able to share the data that we collect.
But I think a solution has to be found, because you have to respect the privacy of people, and I think it's good that they have removed some of the data, because you collect images, you don't ask people about authorization and all that. On the other hand, in academia, we work on benchmarks very often, and these benchmarks are totally artificial. So you are not solving a real problem, you are solving a problem in la la land. And if you get something from you guys, anonymized the proper way, with all the precautions that we can take, I think to be extremely beneficial for us and to be very beneficial for you. And I know that in the medical domain, of course, people are very jealous of their data and they wait.
Valorization is a key word. We haven't talked about that, but valorization of the data, scientific valorization for academics, and financial valorization, it's a very important matters. And we should have some unique national politics in France on how to valorize data, and at the European level also we should have something like that. But it is still to invent the business model for all this stuff is very complex, very, very complex.
Yeah, it's very complex. Okay, thank you very much. So I wanted that we finish that roundtable by talking about what you feel as are the challenges for the future of what should we do about data in general? What are the things that come in the future? What are the solutions that you see happening?
Perhaps one word from OEM. So, as I said, we have to manage a large volume of data, and nobody is able to deal with that volume to get accurate, I would say, data, images, labeling of images. For instance, it's very time-consuming. We have a lot of errors that we have to correct, and we cannot afford any safety issue in the solution we are providing to our customer. So what we are expecting from the research field is automation of, I would say, data, merging the data and automated solution to deal with such amount of data, and not doing the effort alone, I would say, to be part of an ecosystem that could provide this kind of algorithm to all the transport field users, I would say. So this is one of the expectations we have. We believe that we cannot succeed alone. We have no will to invest all our energy in the data scientist field. So we will have hundreds of data scientists. But if I compare that with thousands or tens of thousands data scientists that we have in the GAFA companies, in Chinese GAFA, for instance, who will never be able to compete. So we have the chance to have high-level research in France, and we rely on this kind of institute to provide the tools, to the industry, and to make the effort once for all.
That's what we hope as well, guys.
I think for Faurecia, the main challenge is how we can simplify the deployment of our solutions at scale. This is really a big thing. It's how we can reduce the burden of annotation, as I mentioned before. We've had a couple deployments of products in plants based on synthetic images, the use of synthetic images to create the data set, which has worked very, very well. And we're also looking into how we can minimize the number of models that we have to develop that can be deployed to cover the maximum of use cases. This, again, is something that's a big focus of our data science teams at the moment. It's really simplify the deployment at scale.
Thank you.
So I'll try to express the challenges that we face in more scientific terms. One of the key challenges that we face is being able to train our algorithms on data which we don't really access. And also we need somewhat a clear answer to the question how much data leaks into the network when we are training a given network on a given data set. It's really key to our understanding and defending our position of we might want to be able to train algorithms on data and guaranteeing that no problematic part of the data is seeped into the algorithm, and if so, to what extent. And maybe a last point, the challenge that we face, we are a Europe-based operation in terms of R&D. All R&D is done in France and Germany. And over the last weeks, we're fortunate enough that there's an organization in the US called NIST that does a lot of benchmarking on the algorithms that we develop and the entire industry develops in biometrics. And what we've seen over the last weeks is that there's been a surge in performance of two particular companies which have ranked first and second, which were not even ranked before. And two of these companies have been working on data which they have acquired in ways that we cannot afford to, right? So this raises a question of a level playing field for the European industry competing on a global stage. If we are going up against companies that can access hundreds of millions of data points where we struggle to collect 2,000, then we're in big trouble, and I think that's where we are right now.
Sure, that's a big problem. Emmanuel, do you want to conclude with a few words?
just, okay. Data is at the core of all the AI research. So I think that one of the most important thing and where we expect a lot from research is data quality, how to quantify the quality of data sets, how to quantify the bias of the data set, how to standardize the data and so on. And I think this is really one of the biggest, if not the biggest challenge of AI today, to really try to to center the problems around data that we have and try to solve them.
Thank you very much.